Welcome to the business behind running a successful lighting design firm. My name is Teresa Nessen. I'm the Director of Training and Professional Development here at IALD. And before I introduce our speakers, I'd like to go over just a couple of housekeeping notes. So if you have any questions, please click on the question and answer icon that's at the bottom of your screen to type in your questions, and the questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. Use the chat function for any technical issues. And then finally, this session will be recorded so that you can watch it again later. Please note that your microphones and cameras will be muted for the duration of the session. And this session also qualifies for some continuing education. It's been pre-approved for one learning unit from the AIA for watching the live presentation. And it may also qualify for continuing education from the CLD and the LC, both of which are self-evaluated and self-reported. If you need a certificate of completion, please email me at teresa@iald.org. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce our two speakers. They're from two very successful lighting design firms. John Hazer, an IALD affiliate for decades and a past director at large of the IALD Education Trust, is the Director of Administration and Marketing for Ann Kustner Lighting Design Limited. He oversees all aspects of the business. He provides a work environment that allows the lighting designers to use their talents to focus on what's important, lighting design. And as an architect and lead accredited professional, Mike Gehring has the ability to seamlessly integrate his architectural training and MBA with his lighting design expertise. Mike was instrumental in leading KGM Lighting's growth to 30 people with offices in multiple cities and work in over 30 countries. In mid-2020, Mike retired as CEO of KGM Lighting, successfully completing the firm's second ownership transition. And now for our presentation.
We want to thank you for joining us today as Mike Gehring and I discuss the business behind running a successful lighting design firm. As the Director of Administration for AKLD Lighting Design, a job I've been doing for nearly 24 years, and as an IALD affiliate, nope, I'm not a lighting designer, but I have been attending business seminars at the IALD, IAS, and other formats for decades. A couple of years ago, after attending a business seminar in which design was covered much more so than business, I decided that as a non-designer in the lighting design industry, that there was a need to help properly run their businesses. One of the people asking the most intelligent business-related questions in that seminar was Mike Gehring. I'd met Mike a couple of years prior to that seminar, but this is how the idea for this seminar was hatched. The business of running a business is oftentimes like cleaning. It's noticed only if it isn't done well. Over the years of running a business, it has become very apparent that many people, including employees, have very little understanding of the business of running a business. And many of those same people have very little desire to know how to do so. They want the opportunity to use their God-given talents to design and work on what will hopefully be challenging and rewarding projects. But the thought of the project being profitable is not always in the forefront of their mind. And quite frankly, I'm not sure if it should. They want to be paid a fair day's wage for their work, hopefully with some form of medical insurance coverage, pension plan, and paid vacation. But these same employees have little desire to know about the intricacies of setting up an accounting system that makes sure that payroll taxes, both state and federal, are processed properly. They have no idea what a 941 tax form looks like. They are not interested in reviewing numerous health, or business insurance policies, nor pension plans, but then again, they weren't hired to do so. In our company, my motto is, let the designers do what they're great at. Let them design, which means providing them a proper atmosphere and tools to allow them to do so. There are so many quotes one can find about employees being the company's most valuable asset, the hearts and guts, the fuel that drives the engine, etc. All of these are true, probably more so in the design industry as we sell no tangible products. The process of hiring an employee can be intricate, yet, however, it can be also very simple. No matter what, it takes guts to bring another person into your business because you as an employer are taking risks, personal, professional, financial, that this decision is going to be a success. From a simplistic standpoint, we have lots of work. We need help. Let's hire a designer to help. I remember the first employee we hired. Our design principal was the only employee previous to that, and she was pregnant. There was way too much work for her, and I knew a guy who happened to know another guy who happened to be a lighting designer. We interviewed him a couple times and moved him out from the East Coast to begin work a month prior to the baby being born. It turns out the delivery became an emergency C-section. That new employee probably had no idea what hit him, but he was truly a godsend and ended up working for us until he retired a couple of years ago. From an intricate standpoint, you have to consider and thoroughness, you have to consider some very serious things if and how an employee should be hired. Some questions do need to be considered. What type of business would you like to have? Do you want to manage people? What type of projects are you hoping to be working on? Do you have enough profitable work to keep them working? If you do hire someone, what position will they fill? Do you have the proper hardware and software so that they can do their job? And oh, by the way, where will they physically sit? Where will their desk or office be? How much training will be required? Will they communicate with your company's personnel and your clients? And how well will they do that? If you know the answers to these questions, it will be much easier to know what the next step should be. So, are you or members of your design team passionate about wanting to do certain types of design? It could be commercial, high-end residential, healthcare, museums, houses of worship, you know. It could be a combination of these things. But it's important that you know first before you're hiring somebody. And this will determine how big or small your firm should be. We have found that certain architectural firms would not even consider us for a large project if we did not have at least 3 lighting designers on our design team. It wasn't until we started working on certain 500,000 to 1 million square foot projects long term that we realized that those architects were right. Do you have it in you to manage employees, or do you have someone in your firm that can? There are some very successful lighting designers that have no desire to have employees. There's nothing wrong with that. They're fine with knowing that they won't have certain projects and they will never be working on certain size projects. If you do not care to manage personnel and want to have more people in your firm than just yourself, it is important that you find someone and make sure they're working for you that can manage the employees. It's fun to dream, it's fun to imagine what could be, and it's important. And there's nothing wrong with that, with hoping to grow your company, but it is very important that you do not hire people unless you have or will have work for them to work on in the near or immediate future. I can't stress this enough. You must make sure that there is enough work that you are properly financed until there is enough work. So you employ someone. It's best to know, and they know, what position they will be filling. It must also be determined who will train them. There are some people who enjoy mentoring and others that want none of it. This should be discussed with your staff prior to the employee starting. Over the life of our company, we have put together a list of items that need to be discussed with the person that's starting. This includes everything from the office tour and policies to the server introduction to lighting product introductions, software packages, along with many other items. We also discuss with our staff and determine who will be responsible educating the new hire. We make sure that there is a computer with the necessary software and monitor available for them, and also determine exactly where their desk will be. I remember spending one weekend prior to the new hire beginning, reconfiguring the office and building a desk in order so that on Monday, they were able to begin work without delay. The larger your firm, the more important it is that new hires be determined, that the location of new hires be determined, and most likely should be discussed with the current employees, especially those who are going to be directly affected. Parts of your staff way of communication will come from a conscientious decision about the format for writing both proposals, emails, and phone etiquette, and your willingness to encourage an open line of communication. Now, finding the right employees can be a very challenging task. Unlike many other professionals, architectural lighting designers are very unique in that they possess both a creative and technical side, which we have found is hard to find the person with those qualities. We have used personnel ads in the IALD, IES, Indeed, LinkedIn, Facebook. We have also used the headhunter, and we have also drawn on our contacts both within and outside the industry to put us in touch with the potential candidates. Over the last number of years, it has proven to be an ongoing challenge, and we anticipate that it will continue to be so. In-office communication is very important, both talking and listening. In our company, every January, we sit down with each employee individually and we have a review where we discuss a variety of topics, including what is being done right, what needs to be improved, new assignments, positions, raise in salary, and benefits. So at the beginning of 2017, we had 7 designers working for us with approximately 45 projects of a variety of sizes and phases. During our employee reviews, one of our employees informed us that everyone in the office was unhappy and that we needed to make a change. We had been in the process of trying to hire 1 or 2 new lighting designers. We were also trying to relocate our office, and I personally was dealing with the fact that I was the executor for my parents' estate, which had taken me away from the office. However, we shrugged the statement that everyone was unhappy as just being a bad day. But we did ask each person in their respective reviews if they were unhappy. All but one assured us that they were happy. We had begun to talk to one of our employees about their assuming ownership of the firm. We talked with all of them about our company's growth, profit sharing, what was being put into the profit sharing that was being put into place, advancements that were anticipated for all of them, and that they'd be able to take advantage of some of these things. However, by December 31st, 2017, all but one of our design team that had been working for us was still working for us, and we had 47 active projects. In the summer of 2017, we had brought on 2 new designers just out of school, but our main design team was gone. And even though we had been assured that everything was fine and they were happy, they had all left for various reasons. The plans, the vacation, the awkward submittals all got put on hold. It gave us pause to think about where we wanted to go, what we wanted to do. During the summer of 2017, we had signed paperwork for a new office space, which we started negotiating back in February of 2017. And the build out for the new office space, which was supposed to begin earlier, began at the beginning of June. And rather than taking 3 months, it took 6 months. Needless to say, their leaving and where we were was a real kick in the gut. So what do? We did not point or assign, we did not point fingers, we didn't assign blame, but we did acknowledge that mistakes had been made and we tried to learn from them. We considered all options. Do we downsize? Get out of our contract for the new office space? Do we finish our large projects and have and take on smaller projects? Do we continue to try to find lighting designers with experience and continue to work on projects that we like and that would allow us to grow? There's a saying that we have used, making lemonade out of lemons. Fortunately, for our company, this exit of our company took place over 9 months. The last two were leaving the last workday in December of 2017. So we did have some time to prepare. We decided to embrace the situation and we decided to make lemonade. In ways it was both exciting and liberating, for how often does one get a chance to reinvent an established company? We reviewed all policies and we decided to come out with AKLD 2.0. Through our contracts, we found both an HR consultant, a business consultant / communication consultant, and a small business attorney that have helped us establish a better work environment for all parties, none of which we would have considered prior to the events that took place for us. We sought out and found new employees, and in fact, we just hired 2 new employees at the end of August. So how does what we experience help you with your business? We have made a conscious decision to help improve our communications between every member of our team so that misinterpretations such as I'm happy or there's no problem and micro offenses can be addressed before they become more of a problem. We have done this by incorporating individual communication evaluations with training and understand that not only people learn differently, but they also communicate differently. We have set up company policies that rather than being vague and elusive are established, leaving very little doubt. We have developed, with consultants' help, marketing plan that have intentionally started to use the resources that we have had, but have not been able to use previously due to the fact that we didn't take time to do so, or we just were overwhelmed with other work. In fact, this year we submitted and received the IALD Award of Excellence for a project that both the new and old staff members have worked on. Marketing always takes time and effort, and the payback is not always immediate, but it is necessary. We have been open to using new technologies that have allowed us to think outside the box, and in so doing, we have been it has allowed us to employ staff that are working outside of our office physically. We started doing this 2 years ago, way prior to shelter in place ever being put in effect. So now for the day-to-day work. As we neither sell nor install product, our design time is our currency, and as such, it needs to be protected and tracked well. The best way to protect your design team as it pertains to your client takes place in whatever agreement is made prior to beginning work. As many architectural and interior design firms are not run by professional business people, it is quite common for your client to want you to commence your design prior to the actual agreement being signed, let alone approved. I cannot stress how important it is to review all aspects of the job, the scope of work, the construction management, the client, the design team, the anticipated payment terms, and then dedicate time to writing a proposal that covers your time and a profit. We have found that if you have the opportunity to explain the proposal and make sure that the client understands that the work that you are doing is not an ad service, you are much more likely to have your proposal accepted. When putting a proposal together, we always ask the client what the budget is, and oftentimes are told there is no budget or it's yet to be determined. Once that proposal has been submitted, we are oftentimes told that proposed fee does not fit the parameters of the budget, which magically appears. We will then be asked to cut our fee, which will cause us to review and tighten the proposal. And sometimes we will move some of the scope into ad services, or we will reduce the number of meetings that we have initially agreed to. There's other things that you can do too with regards to that. With regards to tracking time, it's important that design time be tracked. In our firm, we do this for all jobs, both contract and hourly basis. And we do that not only to keep track of whether the job is profitable or not, but we also do that for future work. So we establish a history of what the job, how many hours the job is taking to design, so that when we're putting future proposals together, we can look back on some of those jobs and we can say, it was similar to that last job. We did X amount of hours on that job. It's going to most likely be very similar. So it helps us with future proposals. I've never met anyone that enjoys tracking their time, but it is really important that a person tries to track their time on a daily basis, if and when possible. Now, issuing invoices. At a certain time of the month, invoices, or times of the month, invoices should be issued. And this should be completed approximately the same time every month. Currently, 97% of our invoices are issued electronically, and 3% of our invoices are the client insists on receiving paper, which we send out via the United States Postal Service. About 20% of our clients insist on having a certain format adhered to for our invoices. The remaining 80%, we issue our standard formatted invoice. When negotiating your proposal, you should ask if there's a required format that the client needs for the invoice to be processed. Sometimes between populating the required invoice and completing the waivers of lien and other documentation, it can take up to an hour to process the invoice. Knowing this when you're putting your proposal together will help to make sure that this time is accounted for and worked into the fee. Collecting payment. Well, most people do not enjoy collecting past due payments, but this task is part of staying profitable so that the goals of your company can be achieved. I do know design firms that have been put into quite a bit of financial hardship because a client or clients have not paid or are extremely slow in paying. At first, for us, we issue a past due statement with an accompanying email, making sure, or a letter, making sure that the client is aware of the fact of the situation that they are past due. And believe it or not, there are some clients, through no fault of their own, sometimes, that they are unaware of the fact that an invoice had been issued. They've either misplaced it, did not see the email, it went into their spam folder, junk folder, or the letter itself got sent to someone else. However, that being said, we make them aware of that, and we ask for a date that payment can be expected. If there is no response or it is not acceptable, we contact them again, and we ask for an acceptable time that this matter can be discussed. If the discussion is not acceptable, we ask to meet them in person. During this time, we start to mention that all work will be stopped. Now, sometimes we've already had this discussion that we're going to stop work. If there's a deadline due, believe it or not, we do say we're not going to be turning any information over, and the client will be sometimes very upset about that, but oftentimes that leads them to getting us paid. I have done all these things, and I've had the client call and complain to my principal. However, usually a week to 2 weeks after they call and complain and vent, we receive payment. I strongly recommend that all of your communications regarding this matter be kept professional. Remind them of the accepted terms, the accepted agreement of work to be done, the scope of work that has been completed. Try not to get emotional. Never use bad language. Do not raise your voice, and do not use all capital letters or sarcastic language, either writing or emails or in your voice. And always document with a date your communications with them regarding this. Business insurance. Well, if that's not time to fall asleep, I can't think of one, because for me, one of the most boring things to consider doing is reading insurance policies. But business insurance is necessary, especially if you want your firm to be taken seriously. The type of insurance coverage that your firm has can determine whether or not your firm will be considered for a job. I would recommend that you make sure that you have a good insurance agent that is familiar with construction. And aside from the business policy, I would make sure that your firm also carries errors and omissions. With regards to politics, short and simple, don't talk about it with your clients, with your employees. It can come back to bite you. That's all my recommendation is. And with regards to dealing with money, if you are not the person whose name is on the financial documentation, if you're not the one depositing your checks, issuing your payroll, find someone that is extremely honest, confidential, and trustworthy. Your business can be ruined if you don't have the right person. You also try to set up policies for your monies so that people that that will know that their work is going to be checked. Try not to lead anybody into temptation, and rather help them take pride in the work that they're doing. Now that you've got your firm up and running as a well-oiled, profitable machine, we're going to let Mike tell you how to take your company to the next step.
So this is Mike. I just retired from KGM Lighting as the CEO after 26 years at the firm last July. And I'm going to talk to you about a little more longer term, bigger picture stuff. John was so complete at the day-to-day operation of business. I kind of take a little different tack here to complement what John talked about. So this is going to be called Last Things First. And this is an image of a project that I did. I'm going to show you projects that I did as the designer and the project manager. You know, in addition to the partners running the firm, we also manage projects. That's just the way we ran it. But there is one project that I didn't do that I'm going to show you, and is an important part of my whole talk. That'll make sense later. All right, everybody knows that Fred Astaire was probably renowned as the best dancer in the world. And then somebody said, well, his partner Ginger Rogers did exactly what he did, only backwards and in high heels. And that's true. And that's kind of what lighting designers do. We create our own vision. We try to stick to that vision of lighting through the whole project. But we're always having to accommodate the whole design team and construction team and ownership team while we're doing it. And that's one of the magical things and difficult things about being a lighting designer. So a lot of people say, hey, I don't like business. I don't want to deal with money. I hate that part. I'll never be good at it because I'm a designer. But we're all designers at our firm, and the partners are good at business. It is possible to do both. And I always say, design your firm like you would design a project. If you take the same amount of thinking and time and effort and the type of thinking that you do to design a project in designing the aspects of your firm, it's not that hard. It's not that different. And it's really important, even as you're starting your firm in the first few years, to know your exit strategy. It's kind of counterintuitive to think about it when you're young and starting your firm, but you have to have your exit strategy in mind the whole time. There's basically 4 ways to exit. This is Steel Case Showroom that we did a long time ago. Exit strategy number 1, I call lock the door. And that's where you have maybe a sole practitioner or someone with a small firm that just works until they're done working and the lease is up and they just close the firm, lock the door. Now, the problem with this is it's great for the owner all along because they don't have to deal with partners or grooming future partners. Just do it their own way the whole time. Problem with that, though, is it hurts their employees. What happens to an employee in their 30s and 40s when the owner just decides to shut the door? And why would employees want to work there if they know the owner doesn't have a long-term vision for the firm beyond their time there? And most importantly, is the firm value that was created over all the years just vaporizes. It turns to zero the day they lock the door. Everybody who has a firm has built up a firm value of some degree. So you want to be able to get that value out when you exit. Now, another way we've heard about, and a lot of people have done, is an external sale. That's where another firm buys your firm. And that's usually a larger firm would buy you. Now, the owner pays you a lot of money. Sometimes they could pay you 10 to 15 times your profits, but they pay you over, say, 5 years. And you have to work there for 5 years. They're buying you. So you've had this firm that you run for all this time, and then all of a sudden you work for someone else for 5 years. You have to make sure you're ready for that. And keep in mind that when they buy you, they're paying you with your money. You know, we started working with management consultants when I was in my 40s, and I pointed this out when they mentioned, well, you know, KGM, you guys could have an external sale someday. I said, yeah, well, they pay you with your money. And the consultant kind of leaned back, squinted his eyes, and he said, you're too young to know that. Well, let me give you an example. Say, nice round number, you're taking home $200,000 a year as an owner of a firm. And the big engineering firm says, we want to buy your firm for $1 million. And you go, wow, that's more money than I ever made in a year. But you're going to work there for 5 years. So $1 million over 5 years is $200,000 a year. That's what you would have made anyway while you're the boss. So you keep that in mind, you know, with an external sale. They pay you with your money. Now, also watch out for the earnout provision. With the earnout provision, it says, okay, here's your $1 million. We're going to give you 500,000 now, and we're going to give you the rest based on your profits, the other 500,000. Now, if you don't have the profits, such as COVID or recession or some disaster, then you don't get that earnout. So I know people that have sold their firm for 50% of what they thought they were selling it for, and then they were working for somebody else for 5 years. I know another guy who did an external sale. It wasn't a lighting design firm, but he hated it so much working for somebody else that he left 2 years early before his contract was up. He left $7 million on the table. It wasn't worth $7 million to work there 2 more years. So I had this in the back of my mind when I thought, do I want to work for somebody else for 5 years? The third option is called an ESOP, or Employee Stock Ownership Plan. And that's where every employee owns a little bit of the firm. Now, this could be a lot of money for the founder, bigger numbers than they talk about for external sales, way bigger than an internal sale. However, much of this is funded by the founders as they're still at the firm. Now, there's tax advantages to this, but they're basically buying the firm for their employees with much of their own money. And the employees are still kicking in a lot. And a lot of employees don't want to kick in that much. So they're kind of afraid of being in that firm. And a lot of times employees leave that firm before the ESOP is done. It's very expensive, complex commitment for the firm after you're gone for the annual maintenance of the plan. So that's something we looked closely at, and we decided not to do it. What we did is option 4, the internal transition, basically where the partners sell the firm to the younger partners. The biggest advantage of this is the founder can just depart, just leave. I'm done, bye. They're not paying liability insurance. They're not working for anybody else. They're done. Scot-free. Now, employees who know they're in a firm like this are automatically motivated and empowered because they have the opportunity to become an owner. And then the founder has to live with these empowered employees and trust them, trust their future partners. And you don't really know who they are. It's a 10-year plan, which I'll talk about. But you have to empower and trust everybody in your firm, which is difficult for a lot of people. And I'll talk about that. Now, this is a lower firm valuation than an external sale. For instance, for a lot of internal sales, it's 50% of the revenues weighted on average over a few years. So if your revenues are 3 million, say, the firm values $1.5 million. If you own 50% of that, you're going to get 750,000. That's kind of rough order of magnitude. That's common knowledge. This is a project we did in Warsaw. Okay, now, when do you exit? There's basically two ways to end your lighting design career: die at your desk or stop working voluntarily before you die. That's pretty much it. Hopefully it's not involuntarily before you die. There's four factors to balance when you're making this decision for yourself, and you're making the decision for the firm as well: time, money, health, and love. Those are the four things that you think about with your life and your work. Enough said on that one. This is a restaurant we did in Las Vegas for the MGM Grand. It was the highest grossing restaurant in the whole world for the MGM for a while. All right, what it boiled down to, when I decided to do it for myself, to retire, I wanted to enjoy my money for the rest of my life rather than spend the rest of my life making more money. That's basically what it boiled down to. Here's the stages of your career. This applies to everybody. When you want to work, you get out of school, you worked hard in school, you're so excited to be a lighting designer, be in the design business and have an impact on the world and make the world a better place and grow and learn and have input on projects. And then as you get a mortgage and you're married and you have some kids and you can start paying college tuition, you need to work. Whether you want to or not, you need to work. You can't stop. You got too many commitments, too many debts. But after you get over that hump in your life, there's a point to where you don't want to work anymore and you don't have to work. And then there's a point where you just can't work. Physically cannot do the work. So what you want to do is somewhere between the don't want to work and the can't work is you decide that you're done. Now, as I agonize over this for myself, and I did agonize it for a long time. And by the way, when you buy books on retirement, it's all about how to save enough money where you can afford it. I couldn't find any books on the psychological aspects and the identity crisis aspects of retiring. So I remember this one thing years ago. My dad and I were someplace, and he bumped into an old friend of his with a friend's wife, and he hadn't seen him in years. And he said, "What have you been doing all this time?" His friend says, "I retired 2 years ago." And my dad back then said, "Well, I'm thinking about retiring. How do you like it?" And the man's wife said, "George, when he retired, I got my husband back. The man I married, I finally got him back." And I remembered that. So that had a big impact on me. But I always thinking, my work has always been my identity. Who would I be? What would I do? But after I've retired, it's more like graduating. It's not like dying, It's not like being sick. It's wonderful. I love it. But I realized with this identity thing that I was going through, Joe Montana would always be Joe Montana. Now, those of you who are the international members watching this, Joe Montana was an NFL, American football quarterback, Hall of Fame, San Francisco 49er, won a number of Super Bowls. Some people say he might have been the best quarterback ever. But now he's in his 60s. He probably can't run anymore, probably can't throw anymore. But he'll always be Joe Montana. He'll walk into a restaurant and he's Joe Montana. And I learned from that I'm not going to do another Bellagio hotel. I'm not going to do another UCLA hospital. But I did those, and no one can take it away from me. So my professional legacy is my firm and the projects that I've done. Mostly my firm. That's my biggest achievement, is the firm itself. Now, there's a lot of people who would say, "I can't imagine retiring. I love my work. I couldn't imagine working, or not working. I want to work forever." And so I ask them, "Do you hate Saturdays?" Because even when I was working my butt off, I still like Saturdays. Even when I worked on Saturdays, I like Saturdays. So it's just I have more downtime in my life and more time to do what I want. And so it works for me. Now, here's my story. As I turned 60, my body started talking to me. These are unavoidable things. And I had colleagues that were just dying too young. They're my age or younger that are dying suddenly, or they'd get a horrible disease and have an agonizing death. But God, they're my age. And I started thinking, geez, what have I done for myself to avoid this? I worked my butt off. I had a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. And I realized, geez, I want to enjoy myself before something bad happens to me. And I traveled a lot internationally, and no one really talks about this. There's this macho code where you just act like you don't get jet lag, and traveling internationally all the time doesn't bother you. But you know what? I'll tell you, I had jet lag, and it bothered me, and it wore on me, and it was always squeezed in between my local projects. I would admire the architects that I worked with You know, they would be finish design development on a big giant project in China or Russia, and we'd all go, and the presentation would go well over there, and we'd have a big dinner with the owners, and they'd go to bed and sleep like babies because they're done. But I had 3 a.m. conference calls and emails all night trying to do my other stuff. It was a big juggling act. So I had a double life. And as lighting consultants, we all have that double life when we travel. So I look back at all the multitasking and the people's emotions that I dealt with, and begging to be paid. And I was responsible for the paychecks of 30 families for a long time. And I've been, led the firm through a number of recessions. And I'm like, okay, maybe I shouldn't do this forever. So after years of planning the ownership transition, I sold most of KGM to my younger partners in July of 2019 and the rest of my shares in July of 2020. Now, this timing is a two-way street. It's not just up to me. It's not just up to the founding partner. Even though I agonize, when am I ready? When am I ready? I had to think about when they're ready. And so it had to be time for both of us. Kind of think of an internal transition as you're trying to sell a house, but the only eligible buyer is your next door neighbor. So if your next door neighbor is ready to buy the house, you better think twice. Maybe it's time to sell the house. Otherwise, what are you going to do? So now that I'm retired, I really like it. I don't even know how I had time to work. So here's the 10-year plan. 10 years, if you're in your 50s, you should start right now. If you're in your 60s, you're behind. Okay, typically, in general, large firms make more money for their owners than small firms do. Now, this sounds like it's obvious, but it depends on the margins. If you have a large firm with low margins, you can make less money for the owners than a small firm with high margins. But in general, the owners of large firms are leveraged over more employees. Every employee you have, you're generating a profit. And the more employees you have, the more profit you have per employee, the more money the owners are making. So in order to grow a firm, it's hard for one person to get all the work, mark up all the drawings, do all the design, collect all the money. There's a log jam there. And I've found over the years, there's pretty much 8 people per partner in a firm. So if you have one person with 20 people, it's going to kind of collapse under its own weight 9 times out of 10. So trusting, mentoring, grooming, empowering your staff, giving them the hope of the future where they can do very well themselves, there's a real upside. That allows the firm to grow and become more valuable and more profitable. So one of the things we learned years ago, and I had a young architect who's very hot star right now, but when he was first starting, he said, Mike, everyone in your firm is so motivated. How did you do that? I can't motivate my employees. I said, it's very simple. Our lighting designers don't work for us. They work for our clients. We're their clients. And we put each person with the same client over and over. Then pretty soon the client is asking them for the next proposal instead of us as partners. And that is how the firm grows, and that's how we empower people. So Phil Knight has a great book called Shoe Dog. It's an autobiography of how he built Nike. And he quotes George Patton many times. He said, don't tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do and let them surprise you with the results. I'm going to read that again. Don't tell people how to do things. Tell them what to do and let them surprise you with the results. It's a whole new world when you have empowered employees that are growing and getting strong. It's the opposite of a star firm. Now, IALD, it really stresses the awards. A lot of firms win awards. There's a star with helpers. That's difficult to grow because the star is a bottleneck. And the employees in the long run are not motivated to grow because there's no upside for them because the star is there. Then you got to ask yourself, what is the firm worth when the star is gone? Basically worth zero. Who would want to work long-term for a star designer knowing that there isn't really an upside? They may work for a star to learn something or get it on the resume, but they're not going to make a long-term career if they really know what's going on and working for a star firm. But the advantage of being the star is that you can sleep well because you know every symbol and spec that goes out the door. If you have the empowered firm, the founder has to let go of ego and trust others. You don't always know everything going out the door. You've got 30 people sending things out all the time. You can't check every drawing and every symbol and every line. It's stressful to be responsible and liable for the work of others, But there is an upside because they're making the firm more profitable and they're making the firm worth more when it's time for you to sell the value that you've created. And truthfully, it hurts to be embarrassed in front of your clients and your friends. You know, a lot of my clients to this day, all along, were my friends in architecture school 40 years ago. And when one of my project managers would make a mistake that I wouldn't make, it would be embarrassing for me. And that's just something that, you know, I had to live with. So when a lighting design firm owner tells me I can't find good help, I ask them the same question. Would you want to work for you? Think about it. A lot of lighting designers say, I need help. I need to get someone to help me. I'll mark up drawings, they'll do it. And if they screw up, I'm going to yell at them, you know. So think about it. If you're looking for someone to help you as a lighting designer, what motivated you when you were younger? Have the empathy, which is so important in every relationship in business and in life, empathy. What motivated you when you were younger? Would you want to work for you? And when you start to think about that, you can tailor the design of your firm to where it's good for you and it's good for your staff. One of the things we risk when we have a firm like this is we create our own competition, possibly. We make it easy for everybody to leave and start their own firm because they know how to do everything. We've taught them how to do it. You know, having their own firm and running a business is not a mystery. So we try to make it as more attractive to stay at the firm than to leave. And truthfully, we've had people leave and start their own firm. We help them do it because that's a force that we can't resist. The force for someone to start their own firm, which many of you have had, is irresistible. And we help them do it. If they really want to go, if there's a job that doesn't work for us, we'll refer them. But 9 times out of 10, people stay and become owners at our firm. Now, not all employees are motivated by this type of model. Not everybody wants the upside. Not everybody wants to leave their comfort zone or push or learn more or grow fast. These people have to move on. There's really no room in the firm for that because they become very unhappy, very frustrated, very uncomfortable. Now, most people realize this on their own. If they don't fit into this model, they realize it and they find a place where they can be more comfortable. Now, as I look back on it, my most important project, like I say, was the firm itself. Now, as I said, I led every project that you saw the pictures of, which is typical for a lot of projects that I've done. This project I had nothing to do with, and it's my favorite one of all for a couple of reasons. Number one, it was our first IALD award that we got a couple years ago after 20 years of trying to win an IALD award. The most important thing I like about it is that I had nothing to do with it. It was done by Moritz Hammer, who's now one of my partners, who purchased my shares, and Charlotte Cantillon, and who's now at another firm. And so the reason I like this is because I had nothing to do with it. What I did is I empowered the firm, I empowered the team to achieve that greatness. Now let's sum it up. Empowerment allows the firm to grow larger, and it allows the firm to grow more profitable. The employees are more motivated because they have an upside and they're growing and learning. This results in higher current profits for the current owners and a higher firm value when the owners want to sell their shares. The firm lives on beyond the owners, and the new partners can grow it even bigger and better in the future. And the founder can exit with a value that they created and not have the liability or any more headaches. And that's why it worked for us. So I think it's time for questions and answers now.
So that's it.
And we have a lot of questions. So
Oh my
I will
goodness.
just start posing them. And for Mike, as a business owner, what is the importance of having project managers on your team to assist in seeing out projects from concept to completion? Is this something that's rolled into the lighting designer position, or is it something that you would hire a separate person for?
Can you hear me? All right, good.
Yeah.
I'm back live. That was all pre-recorded. So if you notice, the painting behind me is on the other side. I forgot which end of the table I sat on. So we firmly believe that project management and lighting design is all rolled up into one person. The
Yeah.
reason for that is that each designer can see 5 moves ahead, 20 moves ahead. So when you're in a conceptual design meeting and the architect says, hey, let's do this with the lighting, then the designer, rather than saying, yeah, let's do it, they'll say, that's great, but we did that and this is what happens. Or it's a lead time issue, or it's a cost issue, or it's a detail issue, or inside the wall, we need a fire rating, all that kind of stuff that project managers would know, but maybe a lighting designer may not know. So it made us a lot stronger to have people that were really good at project management and lighting design. And the other thing is it made the projects more seamless, is everybody was on a project from beginning to end. So they're there, the first conceptual design to aiming the last light fixture. And I would always say, you never start, after finishing one project, you never start the next one the same way. What you learn during CDs and CA always informs your next design decision on the next job. So it's very essential that everybody's well-rounded and has continuity all the way through. And this also motivates them because it's going to be their idea that they're going to see come to fruition. And they know that. And then they're just going to sweat blood, do whatever it takes to get it done the best way they can do it. Does that answer your question?
Great. Thanks, Mike. So John, you had mentioned that recruiting and hiring new personnel and designers was a big struggle and that you predict it will continue to be. Would you mind going a bit more into details and why would this be possible?
Well, the reason I said that is based on our past experience of trying to find qualified lighting designers. Part of the problem is, and we're working with the Education Trust, is there are very few programs in the world that turn out lighting designers per se. If you talk to any qualified lighting designer, someone like Mike, or we have people on our staff, they tend to come from architecture, interior design, theatrical, or engineering. Very few come out of a school that's been training them to specifically be a lighting designer. And it's a unique personality, as literally you can have very technical, savvy people that don't have a flair for design, or you can have design people that don't have a flair for technical. So the reason I think it's going to continue to be a problem is because it's a unique profession, and that's a wonderful thing, but it's also a challenge. And for us, it takes us a while to find qualified people. I will say, just really quickly, we put on an ad this spring to find some new lighting designers, and we had some of the most qualified people presenting to us. But I attribute that to the whole COVID pandemic that's been going on, where people are either slowed down in their work or looking for another option. But normally it's a very challenging thing. It's been for us, at least, to find people that want to be working in the Chicago area, the Midwest, and make sure they're qualified.
Yeah, to add to that a little bit, we noticed that our Los Angeles location kind of limits us. People from the Midwest or Colorado, every time they move to Los Angeles, they end up moving back home. It's just hard to buy a house in Los Angeles unless you have a support system in LA. Right. And probably the same in New York too, but my partner Martin could answer that better. But so also we would hire a lot of architects and interior designers and teach them the lighting part, because it was easier to teach lighting to them than architecture to someone with a purely theatrical lighting background, for instance. Right. The other thing to consider, given our Los Angeles location, is that we had probably about 500 architecture students graduating in the area every year. And, for instance, USC architecture, I think they graduate like maybe 100 or 150 each year. So they automatically have a network of 750 students that they went to school with, which is their future clients, which worked for me 40 years.
Sure.
And so that is a real advantage, to be able to go to a school and work in the same city for your life, because you already have that network. It's a big step up from someone who moves into town.
Right. Teresa, are there other questions?
Teresa, you are muted.
I have one that I saw in the chat. Can I answer that one?
Yes.
Fida asks, how do you set your fee properly?
And Mike, I'm sorry, we can't answer those because of antitrust.
I know, I'm not going to give you any numbers.
Okay,
I know this dance. And Doug Gustafson would stand in the back of the room every time I give a seminar, and he'd be turning white the whole time. But here's the answer that I can say. Most lighting designers and most designers in general set their fees based on what it costs them to do the job. That has nothing to do with the value that they're adding to the project. The value that you're adding to the project is much greater than what it takes for you to do it. That's the fee that you need to set, the value that you're adding to the job.
Right.
How's that?
that's perfect. Thanks,
Okay.
Mike. Okay, so this one is, what if the architects or the clients won't pay until they receive payment? How do you handle that? Let's start with John and then Mike.
Wow, that's, when I started getting into this, it drove me nuts. But I consider it fighting City Hall. And we just have come to learn that some of our clients, that's their policy. And we could be a stick in the mud, but usually we ask about payment when we're negotiating our proposal. If we know that we're going to be financing our own work because we're not being paid till they're not, and they also are tying our hands because they're not letting us go directly to the client to plead our case to be paid, then we try to work that into the fee for our proposal, knowing that will cover our costs. And if they complain about it, then we say, okay, fine. Then guarantee that we'll be paid 30 days from the date that or 10 days or 15, whatever you agree to, whatever the terms are, that they agree to pay irregardless. A lot of them will balk at that, and then they have to go back to the client and say, sorry, the fee's going to be higher because we can't guarantee payment till you guarantee us payment, and some won't do that. So that's kind of initially what we do. So it's a little frustrating though. Mike, I don't know what your experience is. But
Well, for us, it was the law of the jungle. There's no avoiding it. There's so many clients that repeat clients, small firms, large firms, interior designers, architects. It's just something that we had to build into our model. And when we bought our office building 10 years ago, the lender just freaked out, said, your accounts receivable is so big and so long.
Right.
And I had to write a long letter explaining how the system works. That we have to wait for the worst business people in the world to collect their money, architects. Then we get ours. So it's just something you can't avoid. However, I'll add this. Every time we would start a project, I would go to my team and I'd say, look, there's 4 players. There's a project management firm, the architecture firm, the interior design firm, and the owner. Here's the order I want you to make them happy. And it varied depending on the project. Here's an owner that brought us into a new architect. We want to make the owner happy. Or here's the architect that uses us all the time. We want to be loyal to them. But the interior designer is misbehaving, so I don't care if you piss them off as much, but just make the architect happy. And so then if there was a project where the developer was someone that we no longer to carry to work for because they were misbehaving, then I would tell the architect, said, you tell them KGM is going to stop work, and we don't care if we ever work with a developer again. You tell them we're stopping, they can go to hell. And then the architect would say, relay that to the developer and say, I just think all my consultants are going to stop. I think we have a job dead in the water. You got to pay everybody. And so I would sacrifice myself to get the whole team paid. And then the architects loved us and were loyal to us forever after that. So you kind of have to choose your battle and understand the team you're working with. And that can help you get paid.
Yeah.
And it help you in the long run getting future projects.
Well, I'm sorry, but we are out of time, but I thank you both so much for doing the presentation and coming on live then to answer the questions. We hope that everyone enjoyed the show. Apologize for a little bit of the technical difficulties, but hope you continue to enjoy the Enlighten conference. And thanks, John and Mike, again so much for coming on. And Mike, you just look way too happy to be enjoying your retirement.
I'm not going to show you what I'm looking at out my window. Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Best of success to everyone.